I'm ruminating. And I realize that there's quite a lot wrong with it. Okay, guys, I have something very exciting to show you. Look, there's only one option. Hold on. I wonder what it's gonna be. With this book, I have completed my entire modern 2026 physical TBR. I'm so excited! I did it! I attempted to read 16 books. A lot of them were not finished, but I'm not going to finish a book I don't like. Also, it's really early in the morning. I'm trying to do this before work because I wanted to do this intro and take this to work to read it. Oh my gosh, this is William Goldman's The Princess Bride, made famous by the wonderful cult classic movie of the same name. So the framing of the movie is that a young boy is sick at home in bed, and his grandfather comes to read him a story, and then we dive into the actual story of the book. It's really early in the morning. The commonly understood meta narrative is that boy is actually William Goldman, because the way the book is framed, to my understanding, the way the book is framed is that William Goldman read a book or knew of a book or had a book read to him when he was younger, called The Princess Bride by S. Morgenstern's classic tale of true love and high adventure. He read that, but it was so boring and so annoying and so long-winded and overly written that he wrote an abridged version of it. So that's the framing of this. So there's going to be comedy, there's going to be author's notes, to my understanding, there's going to be parts of Lauren and Gilder. Oh my god, I'm so excited. I've loved the movie for so long. In fact, I'm basically dating or engaged to the real life version of Wesley. Like, it's my favorite movie. I loved it. I grew up on it. If you love it, we probably have a lot in common. I'm so excited to read this. I'm surprised it took me so long, but I'm finally reading it. Okay, and it was the last book. I'm just so hyped. Okay, sorry, it's really early. I'm trying not to wake up my fiance. That doesn't matter. He's already awake. Okay, we're just gonna go. We're gonna read it, and this is gonna be like, I guess, a reaction, a vlog. I'm gonna start it at work probably when I'm on lunch break, but I will keep you guys updated. This is the last book of my TBR. Okay. Hopefully you'll forgive me for the setup. I'm outside. I'm on my lunch break. I have been trying to find a time. That's not true. I've had time to do this. I just don't use my time well. I filmed the intro on a different camera, so I kept telling myself that like I couldn't just use my phone on my lunch break. I'm gonna have to bring the camera, and I don't feel comfortable bringing the camera to work, and yada yada. And then I remembered that it doesn't matter. Nobody's watching these. This is my first check-in for The Princess Bride. I'm reading it. There is another person at the park right now. I think they're reading a book. If they look over, I'm gonna pretend I'm on FaceTime. This book, at least this version of it, has 3 introductions because this is the 30th anniversary edition, and so there's the original fake introduction, which is actually just the first chapter of the book. There's the 25th anniversary introduction, and then the 30th anniversary introduction, which weird setup. I would have assumed we'd wait till 50 years, but whatever. The sun went behind a cloud and now I look better. I actually had to look up some information because I was under the impression that William Goldman was a pen name, like Lemony Snicket, and the identity of William Goldman is that he's an acclaimed author and he's abridging a novel that his father read to him or his grandfather read to him. And then he starts talking about like real life things. He's talking about like making a movie with Andre the Giant. And so I had to look up. No, William Goldman is a real person. But the meta narrative is that his father read him this book. His father is from Florin, the fake country, where this book is like renowned. And it's also technically like a retelling of historical events in Florin. because he's talking about going to a museum to research the sequel, and this 30th anniversary edition promises that the sequel, Buttercup's Baby, will be out soon. This came out in like 2007, so I haven't heard anything about Buttercup's Baby. Maybe it's out, I don't know. But yeah, it was all so confusing. I had to like go look up and make sure I was right about the S. Morgenstern being a fake author, because I was questioning myself. And the 25th anniversary is like, here's my experience with writing the script of the movie, which I think he did do. The rights to the movie were bought the same time that the book was published, and he like immediately started writing the script. And then the fake introduction, which I assume has some truth to it, is about this narrator who's going to be taking us through an abridged version of The Princess Bride. I kind of hate him. And he's worked in Hollywood for a while, and he's going on about like this young hot starlet who was definitely flirting with him, and he's on the phone with his wife trying to get this book from a store, and they're finding out that nobody has this book, and she's making all these calls to him, and he's like keeps getting interrupted while he's trying to flirt with this starlet. And then he also fat shames his son, who's like 10, and I get it, this was written in the 70s, okay, that kind of talk was more accepted back then and is still kind of accepted now. But I was like, I kind of hate this narrator. He introduces Helen in the different introductions as his smoking hot ex-wife. And I'm like, I kind of understand why she divorced you, sir. You're kind of awful. Okay, so we got the 3 introductions out of the way, and I read the first actual chapter of The Princess Bride, and it's The Bride, and it talks about Buttercup growing up. And it kind of frames it as this like ranking of the most beautiful women in all the world, and it tells us a bit about the like people ahead of her and how at 17 she was the 20th most beautiful woman in all the world. I really liked this chapter because in the movie this section of it is very short. It's told through narration and a couple of lines where they tell us that Buttercup didn't really care for the farm boy. She liked bossing him around, and as she got to know him, she came to understand that "as you wish" meant "I love you." But that is expanded so much more in this chapter, which is kind of why I wanted to read it, because I wanted to see more of Wesley and Buttercup. Obviously with the movie there's time constraints. Obviously they have to convey a lot of emotion with visuals and dialogue rather than inner narration. So I do think they did a good job adapting it, or William Goldman did a good job adapting it. But I loved how we come to understand their relationship in the book, because the Count and the Countess, which the Countess is totally disregarded in the film, but the Countess is like the most fashionable woman in Florence. She's like the it girl, and she comes to the farm, and we get this like repetitive thing of like the Count was looking at Buttercup, and Buttercup was looking at the Countess, and the Countess was looking at Wesley. And then Buttercup that night is like pacing around angry. She like starts bossing him around and doesn't realize why she's so upset, and she keeps thinking about it, and she keeps, that's a helicopter, she keeps thinking about it, and she keeps coming back to this idea that the Countess was looking at Wesley. Why was the Countess looking at Wesley? What's going on? Why would she look at him? Yeah, of course he's beautiful, but like so many people are beautiful, and of course he's strong, but so many people are strong. Why is she looking at Wesley? Anyway, I really loved it. I thought it made a really good moment of tension, of understanding jealousy. I also like that we get more of Buttercup. As much as I love the movie, Buttercup does not do much. She gets kidnapped, and that's it. So I do really love getting to know more about her inner workings. And yeah, I think it makes total sense that this girl, this like teen girl, reacts out of anger when she doesn't understand why she feels envious or jealous. It gives her another level of characterization, in my opinion. That's been the update. I'm, again, 69 pages in, but that doesn't count the introduction. So I think with the introductions, I am around the 100-page mark. Right now, I am on Chapter 2, The Groom. So we're going to learn more about the Florinese king's princes, kingdoms, all of that. Is he a prince or is he a king? He's a prince. Prince Humperdinck. I haven't read a book this funny since Gideon the Ninth, so very excited to continue. We'll check in probably around the halfway mark. Okay. Welcome back to my Princess Bride reading vlog. I haven't really recorded myself reading, but that's because my house is a mess and I don't have any like aesthetic place for me to show you how cool I am while reading. Usually I just read in bed and it's been messy. I was aiming to do a 50% of the way check-in, and this is the front of the book. I am very close to the end. Oh my god, are you okay? Did Tito push you off? What the hell was that? My cat almost fell off his jungle gym. There was one part that was really funny. So Morgenstern leaves out Wesley and Buttercup's reunion. Like once it's been revealed that that's Wesley and they fall down the ravine, that whole part is cut out. Morgenstern in parentheses says that his wife is very upset with him for leaving out the reunion scene and how these lovers should be embracing and all of that. And we should get to see that. And William Goldman cuts in and says, first of all, he explains that this is Morgenstern talking about his wife interjecting. So we've interjected the narrative of The Princess Bride for Morgenstern to talk and now for William Goldman to talk. And he goes on about how it was his intention to write that reunion scene since Morgenstern left it out, but his publisher was against him doing that. And so instead of, this is so funny, instead of putting it in this book, you could mail to the publisher that you wanted the extra chapter. And then there's an asterisk that says, because this is a version from 2007, you no longer have to mail in a request for those extra chapters. All you have to do is go to theprincessbride.com. So then I obviously looked up theprincessbride.com. Guess what? Not existing anymore. It might still exist, but the first things that came up, do not touch my tripod, please. You're touching my tripod. God, he loves to grab my feet when I'm in this chair. The first things that came up were like some Reddit posts that just transcribed what was sent to you or what was emailed to you whenever you requested the extra chapters. And it was this whole long thing of like, I would give you these extra chapters, these extra pages of Buttercup and Wesley reuniting, but the Morgenstern estate threatened me with litigation, and here's my example, or here's my experience with his lawyers and the lawyers of the estate, and yada yada yada, and it just goes on. I skimmed most of that, but that was so funny, and to think that people people used to read this book and go, oh my gosh, I'm going to write to the publisher and get these secret pages of Buttercup and Wesley's reuniting and their loving embrace, and then they get slapped in the face with that. That is hilarious. Grade A trolling. That's something my fiance would do. So I was a bit worried because I was at the 50% mark, and we still hadn't gotten to the fire swamp yet. And I was trying to remember the plot of the movie and the beats of the movie, and it's been a while since I've watched it. I mean, obviously I have it committed to memory, like all the best parts of it, but of course I've forgotten some things. So I kind of forgot how Buttercup goes back to Humperdinck. But anyway, we were like 50% of the way through and we still hadn't gotten to the fire swamp. And I was like, hold on, because Wesley still has to die. And then Inigo and Fezzik have to reunite and find him and then bring him to Miracle Max. And then they have to foil the wedding. And then we have Inigo killing the six-fingered man, and then we have the second Buttercup and Wesley reuniting, and then we have the escape, and we're only 50% of the way through. None of that's happened. We still have to go through the fire swamp. My God. I'm gonna be honest. I'm a little over 100 pages from the end. You can see how little there is left in the story. And we still have to do all of that. Where I'm at right now, if you're familiar with the movie, Buttercup is having her nightmares. Now, in the movie, it's only one, and it's the lady that boos her and is like, "You had love, and you gave it away. Boo! You're the queen of garbage." And then she wakes up and she's, scared. I think we're just about ready to see Wesley die. And again, 100 pages left. Like, what do you mean? Actually, speaking of the nightmares, I think this is where reading the book is so good. The movie is so spot on. There are sections, specifically the kidnapping section, that are basically word for word. There's very little changed about it. It is perfect. Like the iocane powder with Vizzini is the exact same. I don't think they changed anything about that. But obviously for timing and whatnot, you can't include everything. And so Buttercup's dreams, she has continuing dreams. The rest of the nightmares, I would say, are more impactful on Buttercup's character and what she's going through at the moment. Because if you, like me, forgot, when Humperdinck finds them at the end of the fire swamp, Buttercup says, "I'll go with you as long as you promise to keep Wesley unharmed." Humperdinck is like, "Yeah, totally. I'll do that. He's going to go back on his ship." The following dreams, two of them, she is having children. She has a boy and a girl at one point, and the babies are talking to her and they're telling her that she's a murderer, she's a killer, and she's trying to explain, like, "I've never killed anyone. What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Well, you killed Wesley." And she's like, "What do you mean? Wesley's he's fine." And they go, "Well, your love killed him, and because of your love you've poisoned me. Your love killed me as well." And then the babies disintegrate and die. And that's honestly really terrifying, the idea of a nightmare like that. And then one, she basically witnesses her own birth in her dream, and the midwife holds the baby Buttercup up and is like, "Yeah, this one's a monster. This one, she's beautiful, but she has no heart. And I've heard of monsters like this. They just grow in beauty as they get older, but they become cold and horrible, and they have no love." And I think that's so impactful in understanding what Buttercup's going through, because we don't get to see this as much in the movie, but because we get to see Buttercup's head, we see her grappling with this idea of being cold and having to shut her emotions off because of the grief she experienced when she thought she lost Wesley. And then being threatened to marry Humperdinck. She was basically told, "You can marry me or you'll die." And she's like, "Well, I'm not going to love you because I'll never love again." And Humperdinck's like, "No one said anything about love." So she's experienced these 3 years after losing Wesley and being engaged to Humperdinck, where she's just not allowed herself to experience or receive any love because of that, and because she feels guilty for giving up a chance at having Wesley in order to protect him. She's struggling with this idea of I forsake love. And maybe I just never had a heart in the first place. Like, Wesley was willing to die for me. Wesley did all of this for me. He saved me from the kidnappers. He literally saved my life. I wasn't willing to die for him. What the fuck? I just think that's an interesting. I think I said this last time. It's just another layer to her character. Actually, no, I'm going to talk about that too, because hold on. When Humperdinck gets engaged to Buttercup, so first and foremost, he's engaged to the princess of Gilder, which is their enemy country. And then they find out that she's bald, and he like blows up at her, and he's like, "Get out of here! I don't want to marry you." And so then he's like, "I don't care who the bride is, she just has to be beautiful." So then he meets Buttercup, and they have that conversation of like, "You're the most beautiful woman in all the world. Marry me or you'll die." And she's like, "I will never love you." And he's like, "That's fine with me." So we're told that Humperdinck is evil, not just because of that, but also because he tortures animals and whatnot. But Humperdinck is vain. Humperdinck is awful. Humperdinck only likes Buttercup. He doesn't even like Buttercup, but he only chose to marry her based on her beauty, right? So then we have this implied relationship with Wesley because we don't really know what their relationship is built upon. All we know is that they were kind of like teasing each other. She would boss him around and he still loved her. And he has this whole speech about how he learned languages for her, how he learned how to work hard for her, and he's going to make himself a fortune so he can be worthy of her. And we are told that they knew each other before Buttercup actually became the most beautiful woman in the world. But truly, what is their relationship built on? I can fill in the blanks because they grew up together, so I can kind of figure out this idea of like maybe they had some moments together or yada yada. But what is the relationship really built upon? Because we don't get to see like the actual foundations. We just hear the pretty speeches. And this is the important part. When they get reunited and they're in each other's arms and they're like, I love you, I never gave up on you, blah, 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 blah. Wesley is talking about how beautiful she is. And Buttercup says, I know that I'm beautiful. People always talk about my beauty. Enough with the beauty. I have a brain as well. Talk about that. And then Wesley is like, oh, yes, dear, I love you and I love your brain, but we haven't the time. What do you mean? You had the time to wax poetic about her hair and her skin and her eyes and her body, but not about her brain. So this is where I'm like, is this a joke? Because you can't really take William Goldman seriously. Or is this just straight up 1970s misogyny? Because again, this was written in 1970, 73, and so far, it seems like William Goldman may be a bit misogynistic, just based on the fake introduction where he's hitting on a starlet and talking only about her body. So those were my thoughts reading up to, I think I'm at 225, something like that. Right on the money. Movie is really true to the book, except it cuts out some things. Obviously, those things are not super necessary. You get the gist of it in the movie, but it is great to expand on that. Loved all of the information we got about Inigo and Fezzik, and all of the extra things we've gotten about Buttercup and layers to her story. What else was I going to say? We don't really know why Wesley and Buttercup love each other, just that they do love each other, and it's a pure love. But we hate Humperdinck because he's vain and he doesn't actually love Buttercup. But Wesley has only ever talked about how beautiful she is. So is Wesley also vain? We don't know. A lot is supposed to happen in 100 pages. There's 328 pages, and I am at 225. What are we going to do? I got to the 50% mark and I was like, I have to keep going. And I really like forced myself to sit down and make this update because like I might just finish it tonight. Who knows? It's so easy to read. I highly recommend, honestly, if you're okay with a little bit of misogyny. If you can hear my dishwasher, no, you can't. I'm done. I just finished The Princess Bride, which means I have finished all of the books on my 2026 TBR, Read It or Unhaul It challenge, whatever you want to call it. The blind TBR wheel picks my next read challenge, whatever you want it, whatever it was. I have either finished or DNF'd and unhauled all of the books on my physical TBR that I've had for some of them over 2 or 3 years. I feel so at peace. I feel so happy. Let me get into my final thoughts about The Princess Bride and we'll go from there. Yeah, the ending of The Princess Bride is basically the same as the movie. So there's not much difference. We just get a lot more detail about like the exact times, like kind of the thoughts that are going. Actually, no, wait, I completely forgot. Hold on. So in the movie, when Inigo and Fezzik finally meet up and go to find Wesley, Inigo prays to his father and the sword kind of points to the entrance, and then we just cut to them finding Wesley. In this, they threaten the albino, who is a character, and he tells them the secret false entrance, the one that he tells people when they threaten him. And then they meet a bunch of beasts. So, like, the first one's a snake, and then it's bats, and then it's a spider, and then they never reach the actual Zoo of Death. That was interesting to actually see Inigo and Fezzik traversing through the Zoo of Death and all of these traps and kind of having their own growth moments because they both admit that they are frightened, that they are lost, that they don't know what to do without Vicini, whatever his name is, realize that they can take care of themselves, and as long as they're together, they can work things out by themselves. Book version of Inigo and Fezzik are way dumber, especially Inigo. I feel like a movie version of him is kind of smart. Like, he's impulsive, but he's not necessarily an idiot. But this one, they don't make him as dumb as Fezzik, but he's just kind of like trapped in this idea of like he can't do anything by himself. Like, he doesn't know how to think. He is kind of just dumb. They both get stuck on one idea. And then Fezzik is just no brain, almost to an annoying point. I do think they lightened up on that in the movie. Andre the Giant is just so charming, and he just really makes Fezzik seem lovable rather than an idiot. I've said it before, Buttercup has more things that she's doing, although I think in the last check-in, I said that there's a little bit of misogyny happening, and I couldn't tell if it was just for the joke or if it was because it was 1970s and 1970s misogyny was just more blatant than it is now. But the more I thought about it, I was like, even if it's a joke, that's still misogyny, and it's not funny, and it's not good, and like it's really gross actually. Actually, the last few pages when Wesley and Humperdinck are having their, duel to the pain conversation, and Wesley tells Buttercup to tie him up, and I was like, oh, this is great, because I actually forgot that Buttercup was there the entire time. But she's doing something, and she goes, oh, well, Wesley, you would tie him up much better than I would, which she said that like quite a few times. Like, you would do this much better than I would. You understand things better than I do. You're smarter than I am, which just, I kind of didn't catch it while I was reading it because I was like, oh, it's just the humor of like Buttercup being kind of dumb, just the same way that Inigo and Fezzik are. Girl, get it together. So she's like, oh, Wesley, I mean, wouldn't you rather time up? You would do it much better than I could. And he gets really mad. And he's like, you are the property of the dread pirate Roberts, and you will do as you are told. And I was like, Wesley, you're kind of shattering the illusion of the perfect gentleman. You're supposed to be the good guy. Don't call her your property. That's weird. Obviously, I know why he's upset because he literally can't move. But like, Wesley. And then not even like 2 paragraphs later, Inigo comes in, and I don't even remember. I literally just read this, but I've already forgotten what she says. And he's like, you will do as you're told, woman. Inigo! you're kind of shattering the illusion of the perfect rascal. Like, when did these men get like really mean and abusive? So I was reading that. I was like, I don't remember that in the movie. I'm glad that they took that out. I think, like I've said before, there are just so many aspects of Buttercup's character that we kind of lose because we don't get her inner narration. I think Robin Wright does a great job of portraying her with what little she has. Especially in the movie, they cut out a lot of her speeches. There are quite a few times where she challenges Wesley or challenges Humperdinck. And I think those are cut out of the movie. You know, I've never watched The Princess Bride and gone, you know what? I wish Buttercup was just smarter, or I wish she had more to do, or I wish that she wasn't a whimpering fool. But in this book, I was like, you know, she has all these speeches about how she's like challenging Humperdinck and challenging Wesley, but at the end of the day, she's like a whimpering fool and she doesn't do much. Quite a few times, like they're talking about love and they're talking about like Wesley's love for her and her love for Wesley. And I don't know, at some points I'm like, I'm kind of questioning how devoted she is. Maybe I don't like this book, actually. Maybe I don't. I'm ruminating and I realized that there's quite a lot wrong with it. I was going to say this is a 5-star read because of the nostalgia and just how funny it is, but I'm thinking about it. I'm like, maybe it's a 4.5. Did you find a bug? Leave the bug alone. So the movie ends with the happily ever after as they ride off into the sunset. And the book ends with William Goldman explaining that he always thought it was happily ever after, but that's just when his father ended the book. In reality, the Morgenstern version goes on to say that Humperdinck starts to hunt them and Inigo collapses from blood loss and Wesley relapses back into death because that's going to be on and off for a while until he regains his strength and Fezzik gets lost and Buttercup blah blah blah. And then he goes on to say that like life isn't fair and we don't have solid proof of what happens after this, but in my head, they live happily ever after for a while, but then they fight and they don't have happy-ish endings their whole lives. And that's because life isn't fair. And I get what he's going for, but I like the movie a bit better. I'm a romantic. I really like the sentiment he's bringing to the table of like Morgenstern was a realist or a satirist and my father was a romantic and I'm a realist. I think I'm just a romantic and I want to see happily ever after and I want to see them riding off into the sunset and I want to believe that Buttercup and Wesley were true lovers forever and after. I'm finished with The Princess Bride, which means I'm finished with my 2026 physical TBR challenge that I did, the Read It or Unhaul It. Also, Spinny Wheel picks my TBR challenge. I did all of them. I did them all at once. There are still the classics that I said in my video. The classics, plays, nonfiction. So those are gift wrapped and I have different plans for how I want to format those videos. But yeah, those will be coming soon. And you know what? It feels really great to have attempted to read all of those books that were sitting on my shelf, taking up space. I got rid of all of the ones that I didn't like. There were a couple that I paused. I kind of like soft DNF'd them, and I think I potentially could pick them back up. But for right now and for the purposes of this challenge, they were DNF'd but kept. But yeah, I freed up a lot of space. There's so much more room on my shelves, and it just feels so freeing to have, done this and finally, gotten all of that dead space, that dead weight out of my reading shelf. And I'm sorry, what? When did this get here? Hold on. What the fuck? What the hell? When the hell did these books get here? When did this happen? These were not here on New Year's Eve. How does this keep happening to me? In all seriousness, though, these are all books that I have picked up throughout the last 5 months. 2 of them are recent acquisitions from a thrift store. This one came from an indie bookstore that I was visiting in Indianapolis. This one came from an independent author from the farmers market in Knoxville. This one, N.K. Jemison's Fifth Season, which I've been meaning to read, and this one came from Little Free Libraries, and this one I made my fiance buy for me from Dollar Tree. I don't know why. I just forced him to do that. That's going to be it for me. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for coming along with this slight reading vlog update video sort of thing, and my thoughts on The Princess Bride. As a lover of the movie, I grew up watching it. Finally reading the book, it was an experience, and I loved the experience. I have thoughts on the book, but I love the experience. Okay, that's going to be it for me. Thank you so much. Goodbye.